Okay, we'll go ahead and get started now, so you guys can quickly find a seat. Before we get started, though, quick show of hands. Who is in K-12? It's about half the room. Good to know. But hopefully what we show you guys will be applicable not only to K-12, but across the board. So my name is Dan Scott. That's Matt Ludden.
I'm Matt Ludden. I'm the BI analyst at Goodwill Education Initiatives.
Yep. And real quickly, just to give you guys an overall breakdown. We say we work for Goodwill Education Initiatives, Goodwill. People get really confused by that. So real quickly, let's go ahead and give you guys a quick diagram to explain who we are. So we work for Goodwill. That's our parent company. We're Central Indiana. As you can see, there's lots of different things that go on with Goodwill. But our Goodwill is unique in the fact that we have an education division. Within an education division, we actually have three unique sets of relationships with schools. One is our own schools, our GEI schools. One is our client or consultant division, which is I&I schools. And then we also have network schools, because like most Goodwills, we're tied down by our territory. But we actually have an adult high school that we'll talk a little bit more about later, that we actually have franchise versions. We opened up our first franchise version in Austin about a month ago. So as you think about Goodwill, we're not just the retail stores you guys are all familiar with, but we actually have an education division as well. So again, to give you some more background, our personal experience just showed us that in order to have success with Tableau, what we had to do was we couldn't directly connect to our student information system. Like a lot of the systems out there, whether you're in education or otherwise, our system really wasn't meant for analysis, which meant that we actually had to add an additional layer to that, which is our data warehouse. So basically what we do, whenever we talk about all the dashboards later on, is we have to take our data, put it into a data warehouse structure, clean it, make everything, do some enhancements to it, add some outside information, whether that's Excel sheets, test results, things of that nature. And then we actually go ahead and push that to views and then to Tableau. So one of the things we've noticed and we've heard from when we've talked to other schools is a lot of people have a lot of trouble using Tableau, and it's because they don't do that important middle layer. They try to connect directly to the student information system. So if you're one of those people that are having problems, you may want to think about adding that layer. And before we get into the dashboards themselves, just a quick thing to throw out there to you guys. This session is for you guys. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll stop. We'll answer them. If we get more than one or two, we'll probably go ahead and move along and ask you to save them to the end. But as we go through things, if you guys have questions, feel free to raise them to us.
And I'll be mobile if you need to ask a question about something you see and you feel like I can get around to you and talk to you, then we'll do that, or we can talk after the session.
So the first question we always get asked is, how do you guys get local buy-in? We work in education. There's a good story that my old boss back when he used to work for the Department of Education in Indiana used to say is, you could take a lawyer, a doctor, and an educator from 100 years ago, place them in today's world, and only one would know how to do their job, which is really just a fancy way of saying that education has been really slow to adapt data. And for whatever reason, data has been kind of seen as a bad word in education. So needless to say, as we went down this process of selecting Tableau, building dashboards, we had a lot of resistance originally. So one of the things we had to do was we had to find creative ways and solutions to figure out how we can get past those barriers, how we can get local buy-in. And number one way we were able to accomplish that was actually by taking a top-down approach. So basically what we did is we created an accountability dashboard. We spoke to our superintendent, other people out, our directors, our principals, everyone. We got together in a room. We basically said, what are the main key areas that we need to track in order to have success long term? For us, most of our schools are adult high schools. That equated to four things. It equated to one, retention, because you can't keep students you're building, you can't have success with them. Two, it equated to credits. If you're not awarding credits, again, you're not going to have success. Three, it equated to percent of students that actually earned a credit. That may seem like a silly stat to you guys, but the truth of the matter is, we deal with a population that is very mobile. It's very much akin to a community college. We have people that have already had the education system fail them once. They've already given up once before in their education. So for us, again, we have to track the percentage of students that we actually have on our enrollment books at all times to earn a credit. And the fourth area, which looks a little messy right now, is what is the average credits for our students? We did a whole lot of research, and we found that if our students did not graduate within 2 years, they basically gave up. So the important thing to us is we have to make sure at all times that we have at least average 4 credits per term per student, because if we don't do that, then ultimately we're not going to be successful. The logic there is 4 credits per term, we have 5 credits in a year, 2 years, 40 credits, which is the requirement. So basically the approach we took was we had to, like I said before, have accountability tied to everything. So what we told all of our different schools, our teachers, our principals, was at the end of every term, we're going to basically hold you accountable based off your results here. Well, as you can imagine, that what that resulted in is it drove people to this dashboard. So now people had to log in. They say, okay, how are we doing? We don't want to get in trouble by our superintendent down the road. So they started using this dashboard. And this dashboard, it looks pretty simple to begin with, 4 key areas, like I said before, but it's really not. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. We have various filters, which quickly allowed our staff that's got used to this dashboard to now set little things like language minority status. Are you a language minority student? Yes or no? We have some of our schools where we have 60% and above are language minority. They're all migrant population. Again, we can set other filters as well. We can now drill down into a school, view the results, and like I said before, a key thing with us, our schools, is making sure students earn credits. So again, we can now have a breakdown of who all of our students are and how many credits they earn. So again, if our staff wants to know who the students that earn 0 credits, they can now go in and drill down to a student list. And as we go through these dashboards, you'll notice a few trends, and one of them is we always try to start top down. We like to display a lot of information up front and then allow the user to set some filters and continue to drill down all the way to the individual student level.
And as he's showing these, realize we were using sample data, of course, and some of these dashboards look a little bit different from our production dashboards.
Yep.
And again, if you have questions about how, then we can talk after the session and exchange information so we can discuss those types of things as well.
Okay. Sorry about that. The next thing we had to do was once we got people to get local buy-in by basically making an accountability dashboard is, we then started getting several questions about, okay, you're tracking these 4 key areas, but how can we track them along the way? How can we start to use Tableau more and more? Which is a great problem to have, but it did lead to a problem. So basically we set out on a path. We said, okay, if we want to have the greatest impact, we basically had to design dashboards to specific audiences. In a school, that meant you had school board or superintendent dashboards. Very high level information, great, impactful, it's awesome, right? They have all this access to all this great information right at their fingertips. But that wasn't good enough, because that simply tells you how you perform, some basic information. It didn't really drive improvement or performance. So then we said, okay, let's build on another layer, which became more of like the core people, the curriculum director, people of more of the central office location. So again, we built dashboards to that level as well. We now built dashboards about assessment and predicting and things of that nature that helped us figure out how our course grades, our diagnostic tests all linked towards student performance. Again, really great. We still found that still was dealing with everything after the fact. But we realized it had the greatest impact. We really had to get down to the individual educator level. We had to get down to the teacher level. So for them, I'll show you here shortly, we built a dashboard that was basically for a gradebook. It allowed them, all the information they're already entering into their student information system was already required of them. We were able to leverage that data, do some manipulation in Tableau, and now basically what we were allowed to do was, now a teacher could pull up their gradebook, sort by whether different topics. So if you're an English teacher and you have grammar, spelling, writing, all those different areas, you can now go and select one of those. You can select grammar and see that all the students have read, which means you have to cover that topic again. It seems really simple, but it actually had a huge impact because it allowed our staff to quickly go through, and if you see an area that has a whole bunch of yellows and reds, which denotes that you have D's and F's, they quickly could go in the next day, figure out that our students did not grasp that topic, I have to go back and cover it again. So what we found is we really had to take the whole holistic approach.
Where are the topics coming
Excuse me?
The topics along the top on that particular dashboard.
As far as
Get students down to the list, and then you get the topics to see what the students are,
But they're coming from their student gradebook.
right, so basically what we do is we tap directly into the student information system, and we require no additional work from our staff. So everything you see here, and we'll jump right into that dashboard here very shortly, is coming directly from the gradebook a teacher already has to do as part of the normal routine. We're from Indiana, and Indiana you're required to submit what we call course completion, so grades and everything like that at the end of every term. So we're already leveraging the work that's already going on.
And I'd like to mention, too, that the student information system for our own internal clients that we started with is pretty archaic. So they're not getting a lot of this information from the student information system. I understand there are some systems that would provide a grade book and give you nice visuals, but they're not getting that from their student information system. So that's why we're building things like grade books and some that are at a very high level information for teachers. But again, all of these dashboards have drill downs in them to get down to the student level information.
So the first thing we'll do, jumping right in, is, like I said before, that very high level information. So for us, it's demographics. Again, like I said before, we deal with adults, so which means we now actually care about age ranges. As you can see here, we have a very wide range of students, between 18 to 21, all the way up to 50 and older. In fact, our oldest graduate was about 78. We just had him about 3 months ago. So we deal with a very wide population. But you can see here, we have a basic dashboard. We have breakdown by school, how many students you have, age breakdown, and again, everything's dynamic. One of the things we found as we started working with our schools and our clients was they really wanted the ability to actually set lots of filters. So it's not just having a filter along the side, but also be able to come in and click. Okay, I want to know how many students that are 22 to 24 that are African American. They can now do that, and they can actually figure out exactly what that list looks like. And again, like I said before, they can actually drill all the way down to a student list. So you take a pretty simple dashboard like this, which is very straightforward, where you have, again, age, ethnicity, special ed, language minority status, things that are really common in the education world. But you add that additional layer where you can actually go in and filter and so forth. And one of the things we found as we go through is everyone has their own favorite dashboard. Like I said before, this is a pretty basic dashboard. We actually have one of our directors or one of our principals down on the southwest corner of Indianapolis. For whatever reason, it's a huge immigration area. So his favorite dashboard, the guy literally, he has called our tech support complaining that Excel isn't working, Microsoft Excel, because he couldn't figure out how to click from one sheet to the next sheet. So the guy has no clue what he's doing with technology whatsoever. But this is his favorite dashboard. If you ask him, like, how to get to this dashboard, he will tell you within a matter of seconds how to get here. And he always brings up this dashboard because at one point, he actually had 78 countries represented in his school of 250 students. But regardless, though, this is a really good example of how we've been able to bring in maps as well. So you can see here, basically what we've done is we take all of our immigrant population, we figure out where they come from, and now we have a dashboard that shows them. So if working for Goodwill, it's always really important that we can show how far our reach is. So this dashboard does just that. So we can see here that we have obviously a huge population from Mexico, but you may see this random country over here, or the 47. That is actually Burma. Believe it or not, we actually have a huge Burmese population. At any given time, we're probably serving around 150 to 200 students at our school of 250 that are Burmese. If you're anything like me, you probably took geography once upon a time, kind of dismissed it because geography always is changing. Next thing you know, you have this huge population come in, and you're like, where is Burma? I think it's probably somewhere in Asia, maybe Middle Eastern, I'm not really sure. But here, we have a map for it. And again, everything is fully dynamic. So we have the ability now to, if we want to see who our students are from Burma, we can do that. If we want to know what level what their English proficiency is, we can go ahead and do that as well. So if we want to know who our students are that are the lowest level, the ones that are basically learning English for the first time, we can actually go in and see who those students are as well. So again, like I said before, we always try to take a very top-down approach in the sense that whenever we present a dashboard, we want to present the end user with a series of answers, whether that is who am I serving, What age population am I serving? How many language minority students do I have? And allow them to actually go through set filters along the way to answer specific questions they may have, and actually end up with at the end of the process, end up with an actual student list and actually be able to view an individual person.
I would mention too just the ability to discover what's in the student information system as the Tableau developer, plotting things on maps and creating views just experimentally to see things. We find that people have not entered the data correctly. So we have an enrollment map that shows the state of Indiana as well and where students are from, and we might have a student that shows up way outside Indiana and it's just an address problem or something, or zip codes entered wrong. So just the ability to discover your data, I think, is a huge benefit of using Tableau.
Right, that raises a great point. When we set down this journey, we thought we had great data. We thought we had a lot of data quality in place, only to find out that we really didn't. And the great thing about this is, once you put it in a dashboard, it becomes incredibly obvious to everyone who is not following the rules. So we have, like I said before, we have 10 schools of our own. We have 10 schools of our own, and with that we have roughly 25 staff per place, which means we have 250 people entering data at all times. If one person makes a mistake, we find out about it the very next day. It's great. Like I said, we thought we had good data, only found we didn't, but now we really do. So like I said before, again, we tried to build different dashboards for different levels. So we already showed a dashboard of like enrollment. Our school board loves that. They absolutely love it. They love to see how far reach is, who we're serving, and so forth. But that doesn't really drive performance. So then the next thing we did was we started building dashboards that are geared more towards that middle level. So in this case, it's a curriculum director. So we have a state assessment, and basically you can go through and they can see our 3 state tests that are required in order to graduate. You see biology, really not important. No one really cares about it. Indiana tests it. No one cares. Not required. You just have to be tested. So we kind of push biology aside. But English and algebra, in order to graduate in Indiana, you have to pass those tests. So they're really important. Not only that, we also have accountability on top of it. So the state says if you don't pass certain rates, you're not improving students in those areas. Now they come in. We have school improvement stuff that comes in place. So again, really important. But one of the nice things about what a dashboard like this is, in education, if you guys are in K-12, there's always this bad word called bubble kids or bubble students that no one likes to talk about, but everyone talks about in their own individual silos in schools. Again, one of the nice things about this is we can actually come in, and again, everything's dynamic. So we can come in, select students did not pass English. Now we have a list of every student did not pass English. But one of the biggest things we ever did with this dashboard is we added this little filter on the left-hand side, or right-hand side, sorry, if you look at it, is how much they failed by. And the reason that's important is, again, like I said, you have to pass this test. So we can actually come in here and filter students that were within 10 points of passing. And that's important for 2 main reasons. One, in Indiana, you can require a retest, which means someone has to go back through and recheck it. Around half the time that results in a higher grade. So it's important for that. So we basically get our test results in, we upload them into our student information system, they appear here, and now our staff, instead of having to go through a whole long PDF of looking through each individual student one by one to figure out who is on that, the cusp of passing, now it's all right here available for us. And 2, it's important because, again, like I said, you have to pass this test in order to graduate in Indiana. So what this allows us to do is we can actually come in here and figure out who our students are that all they need to do is improve just slightly. Now, if we have students that are 150 points off, which we honestly have quite a few that are, we know that they're obviously not going to graduate anytime soon. And we know we have to put those students into remediation classes. So again, we take a simple dashboard where you have something as basic as student test results. And now we add additional layers through Tableau where you can now say, let's do a quick filter, see how much they're failing by. And it answers questions about who are students we have to concentrate on as it comes up time for accountability with the state, as well as graduation. And we also know we can now use this dashboard as well as to figure out who we have to put into remediation courses.
And I'll note again, like the formatting and some of the things that you see on all the dashboards that are consistent, like you see filters on the right, those were conscious decisions that we tried to make to keep things consistent for our audience, because we found if we didn't do that, we had a lot of trouble with people understanding what filters were doing or where they were. So you'll always see a filter section. Colors, a lot of times we've been arbitrarily asked to make a bar green, so they don't always necessarily mean anything in these example dashboards. But if you're here to learn about Tableau and how to use Tableau, again, we can talk some more.
Exactly. And one of the things we also try to do as we built dashboards was build dashboards that answer multiple questions and allow the user to actually, as they interact with Tableau, be able to ask multiple questions throughout. So even a dashboard like this that's geared towards more of our middle audience, we actually have things in here that are very applicable as well to our school board or superintendent. So one of the questions, if you ever said in a school board meeting, for your sake, I hope you haven't, but we can now answer basic questions such as, how do each of the ethnicities do? Each of the demographics do? How do they do on state testing? My boss, our VP, basically when he goes into meetings, his first thing he ever does is he pulls out his iPad and he pulls up Tableau. And it's really because at any point, if he gets asked a question, he knows within a matter of clicks he can now find an answer. No matter how complex, the information's right there at his fingertips. So we have questions like that we can easily answer. And if you work in education, I'm sure you've experienced this before, where you're at a school board meeting or you're meeting with a superintendent or a principal, and they'll ask you what seems like a very straightforward question, but you weren't prepared for it. So next thing you know, you have to go back, spend a couple days actually massaging the data, at which point they ask the question, they forget the question, you come back with an answer after all that hard work, and at that point they don't really care anymore. It's really frustrating. But again, with having the ability, when building these dashboards in a thoughtful manner, we are able to now answer those questions real time and get the answer right at your fingertips.
And I would say educators are very demanding in what they want to see, and there's no reason they shouldn't be. So we're trying to provide as much as we possibly can to various groups, administrators, teachers, and guidance counselors.
Right. And then, again, we take a dashboard that's maybe built more for a higher level audience, and we bring back in that middle level as well, where now we have what we call Lexile. It's basically a diagnostic test a predictive test for our English state assessment. And now, again, we can pull information and we can see, okay, of the students that scored at advanced level, which means that they basically should be scoring at the highest level possible on the test, we can now see what percent pass. We can see here that we're only at 91%. I say only 91 because they should really be at 100%. So we can now go in and figure out who are those 8% that aren't passing here. What teacher now was teaching those students? Is it one teacher that's struggling with it? Or is it spread across the board? Again, we can see every single level along the way, and not surprising, below basic has 0% passing. So again, it helps us ensure that we're giving quality instruction to our students, because they're testing at a high level. Again, we expect them to ultimately do really well on the tests.
And the unknown is obviously these students don't have scores. They don't have Lexile scores, so they're unknown. Yes?
So I'm seeing like a lot of dashboards that seem to cater towards 1 year.
Right.
But I'm not seeing a lot of trending data.
Sure. We haven't done a lot of trending information. It's been something that we're hoping to move towards. We have done a productivity dashboard, which will show, I believe. So there's still some more coming there. Maybe.
Yeah, so we do a little bit of trend. For us, because so much of our schools right now, well, of our own internal schools, we have a whole consulting side, which we're building out right now, which will certainly have lots of trend data there, showing state assessment performance year after year, high level, your students that do really well on the course, are they doing really well on the test, and be able to track trends over time. But for us, so much of our internal schools are geared towards adults, and we have 5 terms in a year, which basically means we're getting 2.5 years worth of education into one. So for us, if we were to do year after year for our own internal schools, it's really not applicable, because we're moving at such a high, fast pace that you're almost talking about, roughly 5 years of education passes within, if you were to look back a second year ago.
We also don't have data that goes past a certain point, so in terms of looking at previous year's data, and some of these dashboards, we only have data from 2013, 14 and forward, so being able to predict on past behavior has been somewhat difficult in that way.
I think yes.
What are your various data sources that you're getting all this from? How much of your cost comes from, getting that in and all that?
Good question. So I'd say around 90% of our data comes directly from our student information system. So think of that, if you're in education, you obviously know what student information system is. If you're not, think of that as a place where you basically store all your original data. 90% comes from there, and it's required already through state reporting, our own internal policies. So we're able to leverage work that's already being done and produce dashboards off of it. Now that last 10% comes from other random things, whether that is Excel sheets of student performance, student test results and things of that nature. We also were able to dump those directly in as well. And one of the things we'll touch base on here in just a moment is the number one biggest impact we've had with our data is actually the ability to snapshot. Student information systems are really good at telling you one individual area, how you're performing today. But if you want to know how you were actually doing 2 weeks ago, they can't help you whatsoever. It involves a lot of manual calculations. I try to do it myself. It takes about 2 weeks to finally get good results. But we're able to now go through and we're able to take snapshots. So we're actually able to track week to week trends and so forth. But as I said before, again, we try to build our dashboards for three main audiences. We have a very high level superintendent or enrollment dashboard. We have a middle level, our assessment dashboards. But again, we found the greatest impact is actually at this bottom level, the teacher level. And I say bottom level is not, not to put anyone down, but often teachers and educators think they always get overlooked. So we're really important, we find it really important to make sure they feel included. And we found the greatest impact is in a simple dashboard like this, where a teacher can come in, select their gradebook. Of course, they can now get a grade distribution. This is all fake data, so the Fs, don't mind that. I swear our classes aren't that bad. But just a simple dashboard, we have three main tabs. The first tab gives a quick distribution of how are students doing overall in your class. Then we actually have a student list down below where they can actually go and they can see each individual student, how they're performing, again, with simple things such as green, yellows, reds, things that everyone naturally knows. We're able to throw in here, and it's amazing. You have a simple bar chart like this that you throw in some color, everyone instantly gets it, and they love it. It's crazy. Our teachers hated the fact that we were looking at their data, and so we threw some fancy colors in there. Now they love it. It's little things. It goes a long way, I tell you.
Tool tips.
But again, so we can actually now see everything by color, and we can also throw in a class average. Now, one thing you'll notice here, the student at the very bottom has a 9%. They only have like 9 points roughly in the class. So again, we go back to data quality now. This is basically the reason that student's popping up here is not because the student's still in the class. It's simply because the teacher never got around to deleting the student or removing the student from their gradebook after they dropped the class. So again, little things like this, we now find our staff is, if they make this change, they're not complaining if it doesn't pop up right away because they have to put in a change request, things like that. But again, now we can instantly see where there's data quality issues, such as this student. But we also found out users as well are really quick to embrace it because they don't want this one student with 9% thrown off their class average. So their class average here is at 61%. Anyone that's in education can tell you that it basically means you're a D minus, 59% means you're failing. So to have a class average of only 61% makes it look like you're not really doing your job very well. So again, they're really quick now to jump on and embrace data quality. So it's amazing the way that you can do little things like this, and now it helps your entire organization structure from now getting instant access to data as well as making sure the data is cleaner. But as we started to build this dashboard, we said, okay, it's not enough to simply know how students are doing overall. To have the greatest impact, you have to know how they're doing in specific areas. So again, we take data that's already being done, that's already required, or people are already entering into the system, and we can now leverage that here. So now we have a gradebook. It tells you some basic things. Every single student, every single assignment, and how they do. So you can see, again, everything is really basic. So greens mean they have 100%. Yellows and oranges mean they have a C or D. Reds mean they failed on assignments. But again, so we take the information already entered, but then we also apply some other things, some other calculations. And Tableau does a really good job of allowing you to do that. So now we can see, okay, how many points is assignment out of? What was the class average? So again, you can go through here, and now we can see we have listed here 6 assignments, and we can see this assignment, the average is a 59%, which basically means the average is failing on that assignment. So the teacher can quickly go through and know they have to recover that topic. Again, we have to take information that's already in our information system, and we can now set different categories. So now we require, we promote the ability to take advantage of the things that are already available to users. So one thing available to all of our teachers is the ability to categorize different assignments. Staff that does that, we click on that category tab, they'll have 10 things listed. It's really great for them because they can come in and select each individual standard that gets covered in their course and know exactly how everyone is doing on their homework with that. At the same time, teachers that don't take advantage of that, such as this one, it's not really going to be very informative. But guess what? When they sit in that teacher meeting and you have the person next to them pulls up and they can actually go through each individual standard and see how their students are performing, guess what? The person next to them does the exact same thing the following week. It's really great to see the way they actually interact. And with this dashboard, the other thing we wanted to do was save our staff time. I don't care what industry you're in, everyone always complains they don't have enough time in the day, right? And the last thing you want to do is spend time on what we call data collection, right? So instead of shifting the focus to data collection, we want to shift the focus to data usage. And that some things that, like before, break down by assignment, we can quickly see how people are doing.
I'm going to choose a student, so it's
Got it. Thanks.
not messy.
But again, there's little things we can do in Tableau that save a lot of time. One of the big things we found where there is a drain on our staff was parent-teacher conferences or student conferences, because you go to have those, you have to pull in lots of different information, do a lot of random manipulation. Our student information systems really aren't built to handle that. But we were able to build a quick dashboard like this that has you can come in, select a student, see how they do in each of the different categories, give them actually a category grade, so you can see if the student's doing well on. So, for example, the student does really well on skills practice, stuff that's done in the classroom, but for whatever reason, doesn't test well. Again, that becomes really obvious here. So we're able to have a dashboard like this that allows our staff to save a lot of time. They can come in, they have a parent that stops by randomly, wants to chat with them about how their student's performing, or a student that stays after class saying, hey, how am I doing in my class? They can actually come in here, they have a dashboard, a couple clicks, and have all the information right at their fingertips. Huge save timer. So again, as we build things, we always try to keep in mind all the different aspects of how someone might use it. Yes?
On the subject of parent-teacher conferences, have you ever thought about publishing reports so that students and parents can access their information?
That's a good question. I assume you're in K-12. So the question was, have we ever thought about giving parents and students access to Tableau? The short answer to that is we have. The much longer answer to that is there's a lot of good options already out there. Depending on your information system you use, it actually has the ability to have a parent sign on or student sign on. It also, depending on your system, it also has the ability to push out alerts. So something we haven't really gone down that path because of that. It's not really with our schools, it's not really a problem that needs to be solved. But we have given some thought now as we build out our consulting side. And when I say consulting side, it's really what we do is we already have a huge data team at Goodwill. And what we basically do is we allow schools to sign up for at cost, basically, because we're a nonprofit, where they can now leverage our same data team. And we basically give them data analysis, Tableau access, all the stuff for them. But as we start to get more and more, build out our consulting side, we have that question come up occasionally. And as we move towards probably first of the year, we'll probably start to build that out a little bit. We actually have at our schools, we have the core licensing and server. So we do have that ability where we can actually give every single parent or every single student a login. It's just a matter of whether or not they'll actually embrace it. But it's something we're probably going to pilot, I would say, first of the year.
I'm curious whether you let I don't see the edit there, but do you let the teachers or faculty?
We haven't done that yet. We just haven't gotten there. Whether or not we've allowed web editing on the dashboards through Tableau server to web authoring or.
And just to give a quick overview of how we have everything, how our design process what it looks like. Like I said, we deal with 10 schools of our own. We have roughly 15 school corporations we do consulting with. So we have 25 school districts roughly that we work with. So for us, if we were to allow each individual user to go and do editing, we would end up with kind of a very messy dashboard, and it would probably change every single day because one teacher may want something slightly different than another teacher, may want something slightly different than a principal. So the way our design process works is we get together with a group of people, our power users, discuss what is the dashboard they want, walk through it, then we go back, meet with our IT department, and we literally have what I call like a whiteboard session, where we all get together, we sit down on a whiteboard and literally sketch out on a whiteboard. This is how we want, this is the data we want to show. If I click on this, I want this interaction. And we find that through that process, even data we may not already have, we're able to leverage in different ways. So one of that's through snapshotting. Another one is through calculations on the back end so that it takes the burden off of Tableau. It's really been helpful for us to be able to have that process.
So I know we had a question earlier about how much we spend on, or you had asked about what we do before. I think, but that was part of your question maybe, was we do a lot of trying to get the data ready before it gets to Tableau. So.
Right, and then the key last step of that process is once we actually come up with a dashboard, we actually have a test project where now we can now push a dashboard out there, get feedback, and obviously we can adjust this accordingly. And real quick here, once we started to get local buy-in, we started to get people using the tool, we had a series of requests come in that I would call moving from basic to complex data. So it's great. We have lots of dashboards, easy, very consistent. You start off high level, you draw on a student, you can click, dynamic filtering, as well as main filters on the right-hand side. Everything was done very strategic in that sense. But then we found we wanted to move from, as we started to do that, we started getting more and more complex questions. So as I alluded to before, one of the biggest things we did was we started the snapshot ability. So basically what we do is, because we have that data warehouse layer, what we're able to do is we're able to come through and we're able to take a, for lack of a term, snapshot every single week on Sunday. How is every single student performing in every single class? What is their status? It sounds like a lot of data, but we found that actually it's not too burdensome on our server. Thank you, Matt. But this is a perfect example of that. So we can actually have a teacher come in, and we use terms like productive. But again, think of productive as just passing. So now a teacher can come through and they can actually view all their courses that they're teaching in a given term and be able to view week to week how are their students doing. Again, you'll see this line across the bottom. Actually, you'll see a couple lines across the bottom. What that's telling us is the teacher didn't really have 0% of students passing. The teacher just wasn't entering their data. They weren't entering their gradebook, which they're required to do. So again, data quality comes back into play here, where not only is this teacher not getting the benefit of here, but guess what? Their principal, their lead teacher, is also seeing this data, which means that now they're getting on that teacher to go ahead and do the things that they're already required to do. Yes?
Do you manage ranks to the level where one teacher can't see other teachers' information or other teachers' dues?
So the question is, we basically do user filtering, so you can only see one teacher only sees their individual results. We actually have two different answers to that question. One, for our own internal schools, we actually allow every single teacher within a building to see every other teacher. We worked really closely with our principals, and because we have an accelerated program, and they're hyper competitive. Like, these people are super competitive. They actually want to be able to view each and every individual level, every single teacher wanted to be able to view the other teachers. That was something that was really embraced. Our consulting side, we don't give that option. Because with another school, we don't want to run into FERPA issues. Basically, that's federal requirements about student privacy. So for them, what we basically do is we have each teacher automatically gets filtered just to their own. So you log in as a user, you basically have a calculations behind the scene that says this teacher teaches these students in these courses, they can only see that information. So we do both ways, and depending on, and I think both ways actually have a big impact for and make a lot of sense for why we're doing it each way. But again, this is just a quick example of how we can show time over, by the ability of having that data warehouse step in there, we're actually able to do snapshotting and add additional layers. Again, this requires no additional work from our staff. We're leveraging the data or the work that's already being done, and now because we can do snapshotting, we can get much more information. Yes?
Yeah, you mentioned like the one line is because the teacher didn't enter their data. Are you keeping this connected in
So the question was, do we do this real time? And we don't do it real time. Instead, what we do is we do it nightly. So as a result, and we found that things like attendance, they want real time. We really can't help with that because we'd have to literally run an update every single minute, every single day, which becomes really burdensome. So instead what we do is nightly. So if a teacher like this comes in and they get in trouble from their principal because they haven't entered their information, the very next, if they go home, enter the information into the gradebook, the very next day the principal now can see that they've actually accomplished what they're supposed to.
All of these dashboards you're looking at are leveraging extracts in Tableau. We're starting to use more live connections with external clients' data for other reasons, partly for user filtering and some of the things we talked about. So.
And real quick, yes, go ahead.
Do you have the extracts saved on the server, or is it like within the workbook?
Within the workbook. We can talk about that.
Better to do it that way versus saving the data on the server?
Let's talk about that afterwards because that's a pretty big topic. We could go on and on and on and on.
The last thing I'll cover real quick here is
question.
One of the biggest dashboards that had a huge impact was actually rather one of the most simple, easiest dashboards we ever built. And basically what we did was we were able to leverage the ability to do the email alerts. What's the official term on that? Subscribe. So what we did is in education, as a lot of industries, whether you're in healthcare, across the board, if you receive federal funds, you have federal requirements, which kind of are a downer, but we deal with it, right? So one of the big things is with our special education students is they have to have a case conference, a review of their status roughly every single year. If you don't do that, you can get in really big trouble. Lots of money can be lost if you don't keep up with it. So one of the most simple dashboards we did was we actually built a dashboard that literally told our special education staff who was due this month for the case conference review, who is past due, and who's due the following month. And this last little area is they have no date entered, which means that we're really in trouble because we have to know that date to know when they're due. So one of the things we set up was a simple dashboard like this. We have our special education staff subscribes to it, and the first of every month they get an email that basically has a full list of the dashboard you see in front of you. So they can see who's due this current month, who's due the following month by numbers, and who's past due. It basically is a quick, easy reminder for them of how much work they have to do that current month and how much work they have to get caught up with throughout the month so we don't get in trouble before we have a review, an audit.
And I would note, too, as you're seeing some of these examples, the filters on the right, like on the productivity dashboard, there was an include graduates filter that was set to no. And some of those filters have been added iteratively as we've been asked to do more with the data. What was the reason, again, for the graduates? There was in the gradebook, the graduates stayed in their gradebook?
Yeah.
Is that what the issue was? So in our student information system, when a student graduated, their grades still were in the gradebook. So we had to process that and filter them out, give the users the ability to get rid of those students or remove them completely, which is not what they wanted. So.
And again, real quick, again, this is our attendance dashboard. Again, we leverage snapshots, and because we do that, we can now see little things like retention across the school. We can see how does the attendance rate dip over time. We can actually get an attendance rate by week for each of our schools. We can actually go into this dashboard and do it by day if we wanted to as well. But again, we can actually, everything's fully dynamic. This is probably our most complex dashboard, but it's probably our most used dashboard on a daily basis. It's kind of crazy. We set out to do this dashboard. We thought it was too complex, and they kept asking for more. And we thought it was going to be too much for the users, but it actually turned out, again, they always want to add more to it. And because they had such an integral part in the process, they can now, they love it, they use it all the time. But again, so little dashboards like this, little things, again, the ability to snapshot, to leverage the work that's already being done. And as we went through this process, we had two main goals in mind. One was obviously the data to the user. But two was this whole combination of shifting a culture from data collection to data usage. And by saving time, making things like this readily available, it allows it to happen.
Okay. It's my the hover. So this is kind of a common trick that Tableau users can use. It's just a shape file on a sheet with a tooltip. So when they hover, they get instructions about the dashboard, how to use it. Yeah. So there's all kinds of ways you can do that. And I use the Tableau forums a lot, and that's how I've picked up on a lot of those kind of things. And these dashboards haven't been completely updated, so we have things like instructions in the title areas that you see in a lot of the dashboards, and we're trying to move more away from that and find other more interactive ways so it's not taking up real estate space.
Right, and we don't do that for every dashboard. We typically only put the eye icon on our complex dashboards because we found that enrollment demographics, you don't really need it because it's pretty straightforward. But especially when you come to things like attendance, it's really easy to get go down a path and get confused and not really sure how to get out of it. So we always try to include on any of our complex dashboards that simple icon where they see the eye, they know they click there if they need help.
I use that same technique but for navigation, so you can put the left arrow, so it goes back to the previous dashboard and clears out filters automatically for them.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Or go to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can do little things like that go a long way for the end user. And because regardless of your industry, you always have those one or two people that aren't tech savvy. And if you don't make it as simple as possible for them, they're going to dislike it. They're going to tell their friends they don't like it. It's terrible. So we always try to do little things whenever we build a dashboard to actually have a greater impact and to appease everyone. Yes.
Go ahead.
You said you're taking snapshots from your student information system. Are you storing those snapshots directly as extracts, or do you warehouse it first?
We warehouse it. We could do it in Tableau, but we find if we warehouse it, the burden becomes on our data warehouse and not Tableau. Because whenever you're using a tool, especially a web-based tool like this, even if you have to wait 5 seconds for something to render, it's too long, right? I mean, we've all had that problem where we click on something, it's literally only been 3 or 4 seconds, but we're used to instant, where you get disengaged and you leave. If you guys have ever, what's that show called? But I don't remember what the rule is called, but there's a rule where if something takes more than 3 seconds to render, it loses your interest. So we always try to keep that in mind. So again, with that we do the snapshotting, we put the burden on our data warehouse. No one sees, no one touches, and we leave Tableau to try to be as flexible and as fast as possible. Yes?
How many people are actually accessing this? You may have said it at some point, but it seems like you have a ton of users, and I'm thinking about all the permissions issues and everything. How many people are actually accessing it?
So we roughly have, the easy answer is our own schools have 250 users. Our consulting side, they will probably have 1,500 users. We're in the process, actually, as soon as we get back, we have several meetings lined up to deal with permissions. But the approach we're roughly going to take is we're going to push the permissions back on the end user or the client. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to build an interface that says, that allows the end user to basically select, okay, this teacher should have teacher rights. This person should have. We basically break it into different ranges. We have teacher, we have coach, or guidance counselor, we have principal, we have lead teachers, we have school board. So basically allow them to basically assign people into that. And one of the nice things we can do with our student information system is you're already required to go through and put whether or not someone's an active teacher or not. And we're able to leverage that information where if you fire a teacher today, tomorrow their access is instantly turned off because guess what? As soon as you mark that teacher from being an active teacher to inactive teacher, we now capture that. As soon as we do that upload at night, we now capture that and their access gets terminated. I think I saw you first.
How are your teachers accessing it? How are you actually using a laptop?
So the question is, how are teachers accessing this information? And really, it's a combination of things. I was in a meeting last week, actually, first of all, I guess the easy answer is everything is web-based. Originally did VPN, but we didn't like that because we wanted people to be able to access it as they go through. A little sidebar, I was actually in a meeting about 2 weeks ago, and we were sitting down at a table doing one of our data reviews at the end of a term or semester. We're sitting at a table, we're discussing something, someone's explaining why something is the way it is, going through the data, And we had my boss at the end of the table pulling up his iPad going through things. We had someone at the other end of the table pulling up their laptop using Tableau. And myself and the head of our schools were each on their cell phones pulling up Tableau as well. So we try to make Tableau accessible accessible as possible for end users. So whether you're using a laptop, desktop, smartphone, iPad, we want you to be able to use it wherever you are. Yes?
I don't know how many of you guys, it seems like there's a theme of questions that we stumbled onto, so I just offer this as information. We struggled with the same management piece, and we switched student information systems from our school to Infinite Canvas. So what that has allowed us to do is we surface Tableau through Infinite Canvas. So for our teachers, they don't even know they're going to Tableau.
Right.
They think they're going to Infinite Canvas. All the user rights and management are built in, so there's no additional layer for that.
Right.
We can also assign multiple teachers that are special ed teachers, or anyone who's assigned to work with a kid. You can not only see the kid that year, but all the historical information we have about the kid.
Exactly. And as we've gone down this process, and I do call it a process because it really is, the more you learn, the more you change, and you have to be flexible. If you guys got a one-time grant paying for this, and that's all you plan on doing, you're not going to be successful. You have to build in a process, and you have to be, perfect example of this is, when I sat in front of the Goodwill board, we had a foundation grant that helped pay for some of our startup. Someone asked me the question of, well, when is this project going to be complete? My answer was never, because it can never be complete. Because, little things like that is we're using the Tableau default website, but we've already had talks about a year from now, 2 years from now, switching over, building our own website, switching from individual user sign on here to single sign on. Again, so you can basically, as soon as you sign on to your laptop at work, you now are instantly signed on to every single system you could ever want to use. So we've had those discussions. And little things about, if you build a dashboard, you answer 1 or 2 questions, well, guess what? Those questions should be followed with more informed questions. The way I like to say it is, you'll never have a magic bullet, you'll never have one simple answer. Your answer should proceed or be followed by a series of questions that give you more answers until the point you're finally informed. Yes?
So I understand with looking at schools and performances down to individuals and performance and stuff like that. It gives individuals opportunities to see where areas of improvements can be and address those issues. But have you seen by using the dashboards also drive negative behaviors as well?
Yeah, so the question basically was, we show a lot of information, but does it ultimately drive negative behavior? The answer to that is kind of tricky. Yes and no. You will always have those people that try to bend the rules. We showed our term and review dashboard up there that had the 4 key areas. Number one question I get is, how late can I drop a student before I ultimately get held accountable for that student the following term? So you always be able to try to play the games. It's fine. We live in a competitive world. We live in a world where you want to look good, right? But we're really good about capturing who's bending the rules versus who's actually following the rules. And even though we may have dashboards that look at individual snapshots, we also have dashboards that look at the entire year. So you may get by through an entire year you can work the gray areas, right? You can drop a student here or there and never actually get held accountable for them. That's true all the way to the end of the year. And guess what? At the end of the year, you now get held accountable for them. So it does drive some negative behavior, but we're pretty good about making sure we hold people accountable to that negative behavior at the end.
I think we have about 5 minutes. I want to go over a few things that are on this slide real quick so you know where to go if you're brand new. Because I was brand new to Tableau a year and a half ago and have learned a lot in that period of time. And how I've done that is kind of on the slide. So if you're here to learn about that, we've already mentioned the first thing, that we're not connecting directly to the student information system. The data is pulled. I know we've said a couple times that we're getting the information directly from, but there is a step where the data is extracted into a data warehouse. Structure of your data matters if you're new to Tableau. That's one of the key lessons that I think you'll learn. So whether you are using a very wide or a very tall data set, and it can be confusing at times, and there can be things that you want to do that the structure may not accommodate, such as filtering, action filters, and things like that. So finding the ideal format and structure for your data is important, and there's help available in that regard. And I think Tableau is making a lot of efforts to make that a lot easier on the users. And then obviously there's two security pieces, the workbook security on server and who can log in and see what projects. And then there's the data security aspect of it in terms of do we restrict rows to teachers. Maintenance of workbooks and data sources, if you are on your own or a very small group of people are using Tableau, I would encourage you to try and find ways to keep track of things that you're doing, because I found that I didn't do that early on, and it has bitten me pretty badly at times to where I don't really remember what I did a year ago. So keeping track of those things and your data sources, there are some, there's a Tableau workbook auditor tool that's been around for a long time that Andy Cotgreave, I think, put out, and that is one tool that's out that you can leverage to find out what data sources are being used in your workbooks and a few other things. And you can also connect to your Postgres database that's underneath Tableau server and get a lot of information that's not provided by the typical server site. So if you're interested in those things, I can, again, give you more information. I just put the common response to a lot of questions as it depends. So many of the questions you have had today, I think, are answered with it depends. So a lot of what we've done has been dependent on what we've been asked to do or what we've been requested to do. And you're restricted by a number of things, whether it's time, budget, developers, talent, those kind of things all have to be considered. So you can take Tableau as far as you want to. You're limited only by your imagination and resources, I think. And then where to find help, I put the tip of create some sample data, because on the Tableau forums in particular, how many of you have been on the forums, use the forums often or at all? You'll see that people will often respond with post a sample workbook. It's very difficult for people to help you if they can't see the visualization or they can't access the data underneath or see the data structure. So I would encourage people to find a way to do that. And my way at times has been I export records from the actual data into Excel and randomize enough of it and pull that subset of those records back into Tableau, replace the original data source. Magic happens, it's all there. So, and if you are not familiar with that process, again, I would be happy to help you with that.
And this is really the key area as well, because Tableau is an emerging product. It's a good product. That's the reason we all chose it. But it's an emerging project, which means there's constantly improvements happening, changes happening behind the scenes. So it's really important that if you have questions, the chances are you are not the only one that has that question. So Matt is on the forum every single day, and it's because of that reason why you can now find, you have a problem, someone else probably had that problem, find a way to solve it. So again, I would really take advantage of that bottom section there.
Those blogs, Drawing with Numbers, Joshua's Viz Painter, there's a lot of great resources out there for Tableau. So you can find help. And the community of users is the best I've ever found. The people that I've interacted with, I haven't met anybody that's turned me down in terms of help. You know, if you've heard the names Joe Mako and Jonathan Drummy and some of these, Joshua Milligan, and some of these people that are what I would say are gurus in Tableau, are willing to share their knowledge with anyone. That you're really only limited by your ability to ask for help.
And again, that all comes to this whole process of staying connected. So again, if you guys are in K-12, I know K-12, we kind of work in our own silos with Tableau. It's kind of interesting. But again, you know, we're a nonprofit. Schools obviously can't make a profit. We're all in here for the end goal of getting better, driving student performance, and be the best serve our students as possible. So it only really helps ourselves if we actually stay connected, involve each other. If you have great ideas, feel free to throw out in the community, because the forum, because if you have a great idea, someone else can take advantage of that. And even if you're not K-12, again, like Matt said, throwing ideas out in the forum is a great way of ultimately improving the product and also improving your performance in whatever you're trying to do.
And I can't tell you how many people I've seen on the forums who have gone on to create blogs, and these are not always people that are really comfortable putting their stuff out there. But once they do that, they always say the same thing. I'm so glad I started this blog. I'm so glad I got involved in the community, because the response is huge.
And the last little bookkeeping piece is simply if you guys go ahead, as soon as you leave the session or before you leave, go ahead and fill out the session survey. If you liked it, give us a 5. If you didn't like it, remember 5 is bad. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the session. We're able to take away a few things, regardless of your industry, that you guys can take back with you as you move on from the conference. And thank you for your attention and your audience.